This is still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Before we delve further into our conversation on access to fundamental rights of children, let's listen to this background report by Timothy Yusuf.
Findings show that Nigeria has a legal framework that includes the Child Rights Act 2003 and the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. Furthermore, the Child Rights Act protects children in various areas of their lives, including education, health, and protection from all forms of abuse. It is on record that only 24 of Nigeria's 36 states have adopted the Child Rights Act as state law, with 12 states yet to embrace the act. Even in the face of the legal framework in the 24 states, in addition to enormous awareness on the plight of children in Nigeria, they still face challenges to their rights, including poverty, child labor, gender inequality, and armed conflict. It is noteworthy that many children in Nigeria do not have access to quality education due to inadequate infrastructure and widespread poverty. Although the National Human Rights Commission has over the years intensified promotion and protection of the rights of children in Nigeria, the Commission has investigated matters such as inhuman treatment of mothers and abuse and exploitation of children. What is the level of access to fundamental rights of children in Nigeria? What has government done in the past with efforts to stemming the tide going forward? This and more we will explore on Good Morning Nigeria today.
All right, thank you very much, Timothy Yusuf, for that background report. And to begin this conversation, let me introduce here in the studio Christian Munduate, UNICEF representative. It's a pleasure to have you in our studio this morning.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
All right, we also have joining us Grace Pam, Director, Women and Children Department, National Human Rights Commission. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Delighted to be here.
Also in the studio with us is Benga Adeleke, State Secretary, Child Protection Network, FCT, Team Lead, Safeguarding and Children Resource Initiative. Benga, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
And we have also Wina Oyegun, Child Advocate. Wina, you're welcome.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Really a winner, all right?
Yeah, thank you.
Good. So let's just set the background foundation for this discussion, and as I just call on Christian Munduate to tell us what are the fundamental rights. I mean, just explain to all the fundamental rights of children as enshrined in the UN Convention of the Rights of the Children.
Well, first of all, I would mention the social rights of children. That is the right to health, to nutrition, to education, to have other social services like water and sanitation, and to be protected from any form of violence. Children also have a right to express themselves, to participate, and this is why we have Winner here. He's really an advocate for children, speaking on behalf of children. And this is really important, that children learn to be good leaders, to have a voice in a positive way, right? And that is why the convention is so important, because it benefits definitely children, but also the entire society. And these rights that I have mentioned, people should understand what it means to have right. It means children are entitled to, and the different stakeholders like the government, federal, state level, the international cooperation like us, the United Nations, but also other national institutions like the Commission on Human Rights, the private sector, the media, like you, parents, communities, teachers, religious leaders, all the adults that live in a country have a responsibility to guarantee these basic rights to children, because we are talking about they having the opportunity to live, to thrive, to develop. So at times people feel that the word human rights and human rights of children is threatening. It is not. It only helps, and it gives another way of looking at what should be a responsibility. Normally what I hear in Nigeria is, everybody talks about children needs, and we will support these needs. No, it's not needs and it's not supporting. It's we have an obligation to make sure that all children in the country are healthy, are well fed, and have an opportunity for education.
In other words, it's not, these are not privileges, they are rights.
They are rights.
But I must thank
and
you.
it is not charity,
Okay.
right? It's not that you are doing a
A
favor to a
You're
child.
obligated to
You are
do it.
obligated to provide this.
All right, Christian, thank you. At least you have acknowledged that WIDA is on board because we recognize the right to participate. So that's a pass mark forward. So thank you. But I'd like to ask, what's your evaluation of Nigeria's, Child Rights Act as domesticated here is, and how well it has done in meeting the international standards?
So first I must say congratulations to the country and to the 36 states that already have passed the Child Rights Act. It took years, but we are there. I think the ways forward, the achievements differ from one state to the other, and it is important to still work at state level with the decision makers, but also with all the institutions, for them to fully understand what is this about. So where I can see, steps forward, of course, the gap is huge, is in violence against children. For example, the Child Rights Act have enabled this concern about, for example, child marriage or female genital mutilation or domestic violence against children. And there's a lot going on in the states to prevent this. Mainly, I must say, some institutions like the Ministries of Children and Women Affairs, they are being very active in reaching people and understanding, but also in setting programs. But I must mention there is a lot of leadership on some of these thematics by the governor's spouses. Now we want the governors on board. It's great to have these spouses, but this is a matter of as well of state policy. And now I think that what is a little bit staying behind is the acceleration on health. We need more primary health care. There's a lot of investments in the capitals of the states, for example, good hospitals, etc., which is fine. But if you don't prevent, then you're in a problem, because it becomes more expensive. If you do primary health care, you are guaranteed that both the child and the mother are healthy. So there's no need. There is a study about the out-of-pocket expenses that a family has to do in terms of medicine. And this is because they don't have the services available. So health, nutrition, and education, we should accelerate. And there are many, ways where you can do that. First of all, I think the by excellence, the indicator where you can measure the real political will of any state, any country around the world, is how much you are investing in health and education. This makes things more real, right?
Okay.
Because we can have policies, we can have laws, we can have plans, but we need the budgets and the results.
Okay, thank you very much, Christian. What government can invest in health and education is very vital. Now let's bring in Grace Palm, who is the Director of Women and Children Department, National Human Rights. Let's look at what the various challenges or issues affecting children in Nigeria, and to what extent do you think government has been able to help to address these issues?
Okay. I think there are a lot that is affecting the rights of children in Nigeria. The UNICEF representative already told us some of the rights that children are entitled to. But, there's, because there's a gap between policy and implementation, we still see a lot of this violations still going on. Like, there's child marriage, early betrothal of children. There's female genital mutilation. There's still physical violence on children. There's still children are exposed to pornography. You'll be surprised that little children are facing that issue. Children are being trafficked in Nigeria. Where we sometimes we focus more on children that are trafficked out of Nigeria to other countries, but a lot of trafficking is still going on in our communities, where children are trafficked from one state to another. And there's also violation of the rights of children to education. A lot of our children are not able to go to school, especially in areas where there's conflict, and we know that a lot of areas, states in Nigeria now, there's banditry and all those pockets of violence. Children, their right to education is being affected in this state. So there's a lot, And like I said earlier, yes, there are legal frameworks, to protect these children, but the application of this legal frameworks is the issue. The government is trying. We are not where we were yesterday. There are policies in place to protect these children. Yes, so there's progress, but there's still a big gap. Yeah, so we still need much more to be done to protect the rights of children in this country.
Others appear clear cut. One that has me a bit unsettled is when we say domestic violence. Of course, there is extreme. There is violence that is clear cut, but where do you draw the line between discipline and violence? It could be a thin line sometimes.
Okay, I know that the word of God, sorry to bring that, says that spare the road and spoil the child. Mm-hmm. So we usually, but in not sparing the road, you don't have to overuse the road either.
You don't have to abuse.
Yes, to don't abuse that road either. So sometimes you beat a child until you wound that child. It's a violation. So, and sometimes we deprive children, especially when they're not our children, these children that they take into their homes as house helps, they're abused. They don't give them, take care of them. Their welfare is not taken care of because they're not your children. So children are being abused in such, in the homes, in that aspect.
Has the country actually made any progress, in the access to the rights of the children? Have we made any significant progress so far concerning the rights of children in this country?
I think so, but like I said earlier, I said there are laws in place. The country has put on laws in place, so we can say that as for laws, and then the international laws that Nigeria is a signatory to, the Convention on the Rights of the Child. We have the African, we have the African Charter on the welfare and rights of the child. And then we have also our own Child Rights Act, the child rights laws in the states, and also the Constitution. All these laws protect children. But how far have we implemented them is the issue. Because the Child Rights Act, for example, law has been passed in all the states. But they have not put modalities.
All the states or 26 states?
36.
All the
states have done that. But the implementation is the issue. They haven't put place the modalities to start implementing. For example, it says you should have a family court. Not all the states have family courts. So sometimes they still try the issues of children in normal courts. They have to have assessors. They have to have a child-friendly environment for the courts. None of those, has been put in place. So yes, and then there's no budget specifically for children. The women Ministry of Women Affairs they have a budget, but a specific budget head that is for children is not there. So like the earlier speaker was saying, so there's a gap when there's no
one
funding.
would say, I'm sorry, one would say the Ministry of Women Affairs in some way deals with when you talk women, children.
Yes, they do. They do. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I thought you were saying specific budget heads are not there.
Yes, but they deal with them. But, specifically for children, when you just give a general budget, for welfare of children and all youths and all that, it's a long list. So we want we are advocating that children, there should be a specific budget for children so that we know that this is how much Nigeria is spending on our children. Like she said earlier, on the welfare of our children, their education, their health, and so on and so forth. We have to get to that level so that we're sure that the government is doing enough to protect our children.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Grace Pam. Let me get to the most important one of them. Of course, it's about the child. Winner, I just wanted to find out, we've heard from the older people talking about you, but what do you think? What are your concerns, the concerns of children in Nigeria today?
Well, children in Nigeria today face many challenges.
You will have to speak up a bit.
The children in Nigeria today face many challenges, as they have all said. But from my own perspective, one of the most important challenges that need to be addressed is the lack of access to education, to quality education that children face. Millions of children in Nigeria and globally as well do not have quality access to education, and especially girls, because of the issues that they have mentioned earlier, early marriage and societal norms. So this is an issue that really needs to be addressed because it is our right to quality education and we are being deprived of that right. I would also like to make mention of child labor and exploitation. Many children are forced to work under difficult and harsh conditions in Nigeria, missing out on education and a proper childhood. When they don't have a proper childhood, they won't grow up right and they will not be able to fit into the society properly. And that is why it is crucial and essential that we provide a safe space for children to be nurtured, for children to grow. And also, children face malnutrition and hunger. Malnutrition stunts the growth of children and weakens our immunity and leaves us vulnerable to many diseases. The cases of food insecurity in Nigeria is also a challenge that needs to be addressed so that we can, have access to these rights.
Okay, thank you very much, Wina. At least for giving us your own knowledge there. Telling us from the perspective of the children. From your perspective. But let's bring in Benga Adeleke now, who is the State Secretary, Child Protection Network FCT team lead Safeguarding and Children Resource Initiative. You have heard from the other guests, and let's still get your own, feel on the impediments to the implementation or the full impact of the Child Rights Act. What are the impediments from your own end?
Thank you very much. Like other speakers have said, the rights of every child it's not a privilege, it's not a charity. It is something that they need to assess, and then there are legal frameworks like they have mentioned. Child Protection Network as a coalition, we bridge the gap between the government, the policy, and the grassroots. So we work basically very close to the households and the children. And then from our work, we have discovered that majority of the household do not even have an idea of the content of the law that protects the rights of every child in Nigeria. So what we do is to bring this knowledge to the grassroots so that a family, the community, the leaders can understand, and also be able to know their own roles and responsibility in protecting children in our society. So I would say one of the very impediment is this inadequate knowledge by families, even children as well. When you look at Nigerian education curriculum, there is no adequate content and quality or enriched content that talks about the rights of these children. So most of these are done as extracurriculum activities, or you have parents who are privileged to have this information elsewhere, coming back to their house and then passing this knowledge to their children. But when you do the count, how many parents do have the access to this information before passing it to their children? So we have discovered that one, access to this content of this law is one of the impediments. We also have some cultural practices, even some communities that are aware. We have cultural practices that is also having to compete with the law. So the community find it difficult to draw a line between the law and custom. Like we have mentioned, this genital mutilation. Some cultures believe that it is a right for them to protect their children. Now you watch, they have a good intention from what they are thinking about protecting the girl child. But then they are crossing the line to understand that these girls have the right to be protected. You don't need to cut them without their consent. Now you look at the tribal marks. All these are cultural practices that are still part of the impediments that is not allowing this implementation. But like we have agreed, it is a step at a time. It took a while before we can for all the 36 states, including FCT, to pass the Child Rights Act in the state, and we'll still continue to educate the community to understand the content, the rights of every child, the role of every child, the role of the parents, and the society at large.
How do you educate the community? Do you, collaborate with community leaders? Do you go to reach out to them to tell them about the child rights and the need for them to call their community and explain to them what it means? Do you collaborate with community leaders?
Yes, very well. In the course of our work, the community leaders are the custodian of the society, and we work with them. We organize meetings with them. We organize trainings with them. We also use their venue, the existing platform where these leaders have their meetings, so we don't have to create another time because of their schedule. So when they have their council meeting, sometimes they have a special event, like cultural events in the community. So because of our relationship with them from one time, they give us this platform to speak with the community leaders. And then beyond that, the community leaders also help us to mobilize community members. We have trained a couple of members in the community as volunteers and child rights ambassadors. So they help in the community to pass this message. And then we also have that big platform where we can educate the community member as well. And then we collaborate with community leaders. We're also collaborating with Human Rights, National Human Rights Commission, the Ministry of Women Affairs. Just recently, we had a meeting with the National Population Commission, where we evaluate the birth registration of children, which is a fundamental right under the survivor pillar. That the rate of percentage of registration of birth by children is on the low, and we want an increment. So recently, the National Population Commission just revealed their strategic direction, and we're also working with them to bring the staff, the registration officers from the National Population Commission to the community. So that is an ongoing effort now to bring them to the community. We have sensitized the community on the importance of birth registration. So we're also working with the commission to assign their staff to each of these, especially hard-to-reach communities, to take vital information like birth registration of the children, so that we can have a child that is not recognized at birth. How will the community or the country even know that we have XYZ number of children in the society? So that will inform the community, the leaders and as a country to know, okay, in this place we need healthcare, we need primary healthcare, we need a primary school, we need a secondary school. But we don't have, if you don't have a data on how many children reside in a particular community, it will be difficult for governments to plan for such communities. So those are the steps we have been taking to educate the community to know that children's rights are rights and they are not privileges.
Okay. All right. Binga, thank you very much. You've said a lot of things, but one has refused to go away from my head. You are talking about the culture. We are very cultural people in Nigeria. And so I wanted to ask Christian, I know that UNICEF embarks on a lot of research, but what have you found to be the factors fueling cultural practices like child marriage, female genital mutilation, and others in Nigeria?
Yeah, well, in terms of child marriage, there are different motivations on why parents are, giving their girl childs. First of all, one of the reasons for them is the economic aspect, right? But if you want to put it too dramatic, the girl is not an object that can become a transactional economic operation, right? So the girls have the right to have education and and then later on when they're ready, they decide. No, in many occasions they are married to men that can be their parents, their father or their grandfather. And this goes against nature, right? And in other cases, they're married too young and they become pregnant. And honestly, that's science. The body of a woman needs to, the girl needs to develop all her reproductive organs, and once she becomes a woman, then she can, be a mother. But at this stage, we are having small girls, having babies too soon. I've been in several parts of the country, because when I speak, it's because I have seen. And you can see girls as young as 16, 17 years already with 2 or 3 kids. This goes against nature, right? So, yes, cultural beliefs to an extent, right? And I think a lot has to do with lack of information and parental guidance. So this is one thing. Genital female mutilation, I heard, is a practice to protect girls. I wonder what type of protection is given by mutilating a girl, right? This if someone can really explain to me, but what is the type of protection when you mutilate a girl?
I don't use the word mutilation in this instance, because some will argue that you also do that for the boy child, which is, just, they call it circumcision. And so some say it is just circumcision.
The circumcision was practiced, it's not and no longer done. And some years back, it was done by the doctors based on preventing infections, future infections on men, right? A lot of prostate cancer has to do with, first multi-partners, etc. So papilloma transfers from one partner to the other, lack of proper hygiene. So the mutilation had to do, and even anciently, the reason is hygiene. Now the question is the circumcision, right? Now the mutilation of a girl, my question is, what does it has to do with hygiene or with risk of having, cancer? So I think it's a very traumatic practice, and very painful. There are some communities that they are mutilating their babies, girls, as early as the first year of life, right? And then you should ask why. Some have said that because they are protecting her for not being sexually active. And it is very contradictory, because if you are mutilating a girl and in the theory of not being sexually active, why you are giving them away to men before they become adults?
So it's contradictory.
Yeah, really contradictory, right? And this is one of the toughest parts of children's rights of people to understand. But I really want to go on the social rights, because that is the origin of many things, even, this type of practices, right? It's a lot of lack of education, right? Of knowing. So we cannot think on a Nigeria where every year 8 million, you have 8 million births every year. So in a 5-year time, you have 40 million children. Imagine that. That is really dramatic if all the services are not at hand. So this is contributing a lot to the gap of access to social services. So education is critical for the girl and also critical for the boy. You have a lot of dangers, and that really affects the life of children. Violence, gangs, narco traffickers, illicit trafficking of people, you mention it, and all these dangers that children are subjected to when they are in the streets, right? This is where we need to focus our eyes, and not really marrying the girls or, mutilating the girls. Parents should know that educating, making the efforts to send their children to school. The local governments should really have an accountability by making sure that the school is open and it's working. Okay. State level to invest in security for the schools, right? This is what we should look at, because the population is growing exponentially.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Christian. Well, Grace Palm, National Human Rights Commission. Let's look at what your commission is doing actually to tackle the abuse of the children. I mean, what measures are being taken to address, or prevent child abuse, trafficking, exploitation, and so many others in Nigeria? What measures?
Okay. First of all, the issue of children, especially women and children, because we recognize their vulnerability, it's a very dear thematic area to the Commission. And so there is a department that has been specifically created to cater for women and children. And that's number one. That's how important it is to us. So we have that. And then we were parties, to advocating for the passage of the Child Rights Act in Nigeria and in the States. We followed up because we have offices in the 36 states in the country. So we're watching this very closely and advocating and making sure. And then in the state offices too, we do sensitization. You know, we in the state offices as well as the headquarters, we do school sensitization. Every month, we go to schools and we educate them on the Child Rights Act, on their own rights and their own obligations too, because children, they have rights and they also have, you know, obligations to play. So we do that, and the idea is to catch them young, you know, so that children grow with the culture of respect for human rights. In that way, we are hoping that the generation that is coming up, you know, will know what human rights are, and, you know, will grow up with that culture of respect for human rights. So probably in future we should have less abuse, you know, of human rights in the country generally. And then we also handle cases of human rights violations against children. You know, almost every day we have complaints coming to our office, and we seek redress on behalf of the children. One issue that we've had recently, you know, coming to our office, child abandonment, you know, it's very high. We have what we call a dashboard report that we do every month, you know, reporting cases, you know, that have been reported to us, figures, you know, and we noticed that from January till now, the figure for abandonment of children is quite high. So we're thinking of having like a round table, you know, kind of thing, nationwide town hall meeting to discuss with stakeholders, the community leaders, the religious leaders, women leaders, to find out what is really happening and then forge a way forward, you know, on how to tackle these issues. Because as we are campaigning for the rights of children to have access to their fundamental human rights, we notice that, you know, like the cultural issues and some other religious issues, you know, are still, you know, playing a negative role, you know, that it's affecting, you know, those rights. So we want to, as much as possible, carry everybody along, you know, so that we will see how, you know, we can continue to reduce the figures and not allow these figures of abuse of children to keep going up. We're also investigating the issue of abuse of children in Borno State. You know, there was a report that children are being abused, you know, especially the returnees, those that are returning from captivity, you know, from the insurgents. You know, a lot of these children are being recovered, a lot of them are escaping, and then they are being discriminated against, you know, when they return home. You know, people look at them, these are Boko Haram children, these are Boko Haram wives, and so they have that issue, you know, integrating back into the society. So we're investigating that. And if you remember, not too long ago, there was this Reuters report that 10,000 abortions were done by the military, you know, in insurgency in Borno State, in the Northeast generally. And the Human Rights Commission quickly took that up and set up a panel of inquiry, and we investigated. Thankfully, the report came up, I think, 2 weeks ago, and the military was not indicted. So those are some of the things that the commission.
I want to find out, does your commission have any support system for victims of child abuse?
Not really. But what we do is that we have partners, you know, NGOs that work in that area. So what we do is that when we have victims like that, or survivors of human rights, of rape and all other sexual abuse, we link them up to our partners, and they access help, maybe shelter and some other health support that they may need.
Because that is the challenge that many of the victims face.
Yeah.
There's no, they don't get support, adequate support for them to be able to continue with their lives. So I think you need to do more in that regards. Okay.
And Christian had been itching to respond to some of the issues you had raised. I had wanted to talk publicity, but so that we don't lose the moment. So let's...
Yeah, I just wanted to explain what is the role of a National Commission of Human Rights.
Okay.
This comes with the concept of check and balances.
Okay.
So their main role is to monitor the proper observation of human rights. In the case of children, as I explained, in those rights that I already mentioned. And they do this follow-up with the government institutions, where they're federal or state level. That's why they have offices at state level. So they look at if there are violations against children, and they have the capacity to make corrections. And if there are grave violations, even to set cases in terms of, legal matters. They also inform people, right? What do you mean by a human right? I say there's a lot of speculation and misunderstanding around human rights. Human rights is, I respect you, you respect me. I have a child, I am responsible for the child. I am a government authority, I'm sitting there to protect the people, starting with children, making sure children have what is under my area of responsibility, which is social services. They are not responsible to implement programs and projects for children. That is why you have the executive branch, and as she rightly said, there are many NGOs that support on this. But it is not the National Commission of Human Rights.
All right, thank you for that clarification. But somewhere along the line, you brought us back to the issue of awareness. Now, earlier you had said it is more a problem of, not knowing. And so I'd like to ask Benga, what more needs to come into, what elements needs to be brought into our publicity, into our creating awareness, sensitization, whatever you call it, to make it count the most, especially when it concerns children?
Thank you very much. Recently, we need, like what Mrs. Grace Palmer said, we need a specific budgetary allocation to carry out sensitization in the community.
By who?
From the government, from stakeholders who have children's concern.
Because National Orientation Agency is there, and then you have some other media organizations. Part of what we are doing here is sensitization.
Yes.
So what else needs to be brought in?
Yes, like I said, more funding needs to be brought in, because at the program level, you have the program on paper for sensitization, but somebody needs to go to the grassroots to sensitize the community. So we need more funding. And then in respect to that, recently, earlier this month, there was a first ministerial conference in Colombia, and Nigeria was one of the pathfinder countries that attended that conference. And one of the plans that Nigeria has was to make a 7-point commitment towards violence against children. And then we have in that line caregiver support, which some of the caregivers need some support in terms of funding or economic empowerment to understand, be able adequately equipped to protect these children. And then recently, it was in the news earlier this week, we have some of the partners who have provided some form of grants to Child Protection Network, the Lagos State, and the Ogun State chapter to provide this support to the grassroots. So beyond the sensitization, we still need more budgetary allocation to carry out this sensitization. FCT, Child Protection Network, have also supported one of the arms of the HAMAC, the child desk, to help them with data, because you cannot plan without data. So we've been able to gather some of the data of the violence against children within FCT, and then with the support of the desk officer, we're able to present it to the minister, and then there is a budgetary allocation specifically for children needs.
Okay.
So beyond the sensitization, we still need more funding to help us take this sensitization. Media has been playing a very fantastic role. We'll still encourage that, like what NTA is doing, that we want to also continue in this. We also have some other media organizations who are also part of our forum when we have our meetings, so that when projecting issues, narratives about children and their rights, they are better informed and know how to project this information to the society.
Are you involving the entertainment industry also in your, propagation of the children's rights? Because they can be very useful as well.
Yes, during our sensitization in the community, we try as much as possible to bring them the entertainment industry, because even most other
because
products,
they have so much influence on the kids.
Exactly, exactly. So we have some of them that even seeing them being part of our campaign, people want to come out and listen to them. So, and then we do this where it's visible, because it also has to do with funding. Some of us, like Christian have said, well, there's a lot of out-of-pocket spending, and then there's a limit that every other person too can go. But then we are not relenting. We are still trying to identify other stakeholders that can partner with us to bring these child rights into the fore and the community.
Earlier on, you talked about trying to inculcate child rights into school curriculum and all that. Are you also, discussing with the Ministry of Education, like we have in other climes, like in Europe, in America? You see, in schools, the children are taught these are your rights, and if the parents go against it, they have the right to call the police. They just call the police on you and all that. Can that happen in this climb? Is it possible? And are you in any way thinking of probably discussing with the Ministry of Education the essence of having this thing in the curriculum and all that?
Thank you very much for that quite a vital question. It is very possible. When there is will, there is a way. And then the Ministry of Education has done quite a lot of things. And we have, from the basic, we have some form of this education in the curriculum, like the sexual rights, reproductive sexual health. It has been inculcated in some of the basic curriculum for primary schools. And then at the secondary school level, some subjects like primary physical health education, we have some components of this in them. We are still discussing with them, trying to see how this can be expanded, so that some of all these rights can also be covered, because we have 4 pillars that majorly protects the rights of the children. Survival is one of them, protection is one of them, their development in society, and then their participation, which is the theme of this, the core theme of this year's World Children's Day. So we are working with Ministry of Health, Education, and in most of our forums that we're engaged, they are also part of it. We cannot rule them out. They're also giving us access to schools. So while we are working on these contents to be integrated into the curriculum, the Ministry of Education has granted access that as Child Protection Network, we can access the school, working with the school-based management structure, to also provide sensitization to the children and the teachers. Some of the teachers have been trained on this content, and they provide guide as counselors to these students. So where there are cases in the school, they know there is also a focal teacher in the school that they can report to. And if it's beyond what the teachers as an ambassador can handle, they escalate it, and then we intervene.
Okay.
All
Thank
right,
you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's get back to Winner. You've had a holiday time, but I wanted to find out, in order to have a better understanding of, what the issues are. What inspired you to become a child advocate for the rights of children, and how does it feel when you do this? What responsibility do you feel?
Well, firstly, what inspired me is the situation of children in Nigeria. When you see these statistics, these figures, these aren't just numbers. These are real people out there facing these challenges, facing these struggles, being deprived of their rights. It almost breaks one. So that's my inspiration, that's my motivation. I feel like by being the voice of those around me, I can help make a change. I can help amplify the voices of children out there who do not have such an opportunity or platform like I've been given. Yeah, and that's my inspiration.
Okay, what has been the response of government and other agencies to your advocacy?
Well, they have continued to assure us that they are working and they will get the job done. They have continued to assure us that they will protect the rights of children, that they will see that we are nurtured well, that we are, protected, and that they'll see that our basic needs are covered.
Now, what platforms do you have to do this? Now you are here today, of course, because it's Universal Children's Day and all of it. What platforms do you have to do your advocacy?
Well, I'll start by saying I have my social media platforms. I'm on Instagram, I'm on LinkedIn. I post from time to time, advocating for children's rights. I've also been privileged to attend various events and panel discussions. Like recently I was at the Accountability Summit. I've also been at the UN House, where in collaboration with Step Up Nigeria and UNODC, where we discussed on how to create a corruption-free Nigeria for all citizens, including children. These are a few of the platforms. Also, being able to speak to people around me, my family members, my community members, and my mates in school as well.
Tell us, what are some of the challenges?
I'm sorry, I wanted to find out how old he is.
Yeah,
to
you
put
tell
this
us,
in perspective.
how old are you?
I am 14.
14 years old. Okay. In this, your advocacy, what are the challenges you have come across?
Firstly, a major challenge that I have faced is, some people around me that I try to speak to are kind of indifferent or not bothered. Like most of them don't even know how.
Are they adults or
they can
children?
make, especially children.
Okay, go ahead.
They don't even know how they can make a difference. They don't know what the government is doing and how they can help. They don't know, they don't see why it's their business, but really it's their business. And also another challenge that I've faced is maybe not big enough platforms to share my voice. Sometimes I feel like what I'm doing is not enough. So yeah.
Have you been able to attract anybody probably from the government angle? I mean, in your advocacy, have you gotten any response from probably government, states, federal or local, or maybe government agencies? Have you gotten any response so far in your advocacies?
I don't think any government agencies so far, but international agencies as well, as UNICEF is present here. And also, Step Up Nigeria is they are a non-governmental organization based in Nigeria here, so they are the major link that I've gotten.
Can you share a particular story of a moment when your advocacy had made a difference? Is there a story, of any time that your advocacy as a child has made a difference? And the idea is to try and gauge, if they get to listen to you, and if it makes the mark that we expect it to make, that a child is taking up advocacy for children's rights.
Well, I'm not sure I have any particular story, but I have been seeing impacts
Okay.
and changes in people around me. Like some of my mates that have been indifferent about this situation before, when they see me, they are inspired, and they know that if I can do this, that they can do this too. It stirs up that spirit in them, to join in this fight, because we need all hands on deck. It's not just the business of the government or the key stakeholders. Every member of the community and society has to be involved in this.
All right, thank you very much, Winner. We'll get back to you. We'll take a break now. When we come back, the conversation continues. Stay with us.
Nigeria, ready to breathe.
We have our guests here. So, Christian, I want to ask you, just like I said just in the moment, what initiatives do you think, because you talk so much about the need for girl child education and the need to promote, healthcare, in the country. So what initiative do you think government, both at the national and sub-nationals, should, put in place to promote this girl child education and healthcare in the country?
Yes, so in some areas in the country, maybe it's not really possible to access school because of security or because of distance or because of lack of schools, basically. And there, of course, there can be programs where you have alternative ways of learning. So we are working with the ministry, the Federal Ministry of Education, and in some states on a program that is called the Nigerian Learning Passport. Okay. This program has a very robust content in terms of learning. It has modules for teachers, it has modules for students. Children that are out of school can access the learning from the teachers, and they can learn. You can use a small mobile phone, you don't need like a big tablet, etc. Radio is an excellent means to learn, at least to learn by listening, because basically you really need furthermore efforts to know how to read and how to write, but at least you get some learning. But the best way to learn, of course, is in school. Now, globally, the average of investment in education should be 15% of the national budget. In Nigeria, I think it is around 6-7%. So this is the first answer, right? There's a need for more teachers. And teachers also who are really committed to teach, because that's another issue. How much, and this is why we are also appealing to people, how much people, whether you are a teacher, a doctor, a nurse, a health worker, or just a citizen, how much are you committed to really serve, to really do what you are supposed to be doing in your job properly? So education, this is the only way. Having access to school and having trained and qualified teachers who will also have the heart, the passion to teach their children, because you can have very well qualified teachers, but they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I think this is the way to do it. It's not a science rocket, basically. It is just to have the will to do, the political will to invest more funds where they should be invested.
Political will. The political will is needed. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, Victor?
Yeah, I had wanted to stay with Christian and ask, what is the role of children in all of this?
Well, as Grace rightly said, children have rights and children have obligations. So their role is, for example, continuing on education, is they have a right to receive education, they have an obligation to study, right? To comply, to do well at school. That is the part. That is why all these child rights, it's also building up positive citizens. I have a right, I have an obligation. So I have a right of not being abused, of not, being subject to any form of violence. I have an obligation not to abuse my brothers, my sisters, my fellow friends. I have a right not to be violated at home or sexually assaulted. I have an obligation to respect my parents,
Because
to support my parents. And this is where, things might get distorted at time and then misunderstood. All children have the obligation and the responsibility to love and to respect their parents. But they also have a right not to be abused.
Okay.
all right,
That
now,
is just,
I wanted
it's just
to
like aligning cultural, norms with child rights. Okay.
because
Okay, you want to say? No?
earlier, I think it was Grace who said that children are exposed to pornography. Now, but we have children who snoop around looking at things they shouldn't look at, going where they shouldn't go. They are not being exposed. They are the ones now, going after the things that are beyond their grade. How can this be dealt with? What's the place of parents? How can parents manage this?
Well, you have access, for example, normally children get captured in these criminal networks because, they are hunting children. So, because how do they get to know what website to access? It's not that they know.
Social media.
It's social media,
That is
right?
the danger of technology
That
now.
is, well, in a
Social
way,
media.
yes.
They don't need to even look for
Because the moment you visit a site, it keeps
it. It
popping
takes you
up.
here,
Yes.
take you
Keeps
there.
Popping
It's
up.
so-
Keeps
Yes.
popping up. So how can that be regulated?
Well, some governments have regulated, for example, for in TV, in mainly I wouldn't say radio, but TV and social media, frequency of time for programs for children. They also sort of control what is going around in the social media, because I must say it's not just pornography. There's also an incitation for bullying, right? This has become a practice among children. So, and all of this is because, and again, there is no basic education or formation on knowledge about how to respect the human being you have at your side. So no kid have no right to bully another child at school, and there should be norms and, of course, disciplinary actions when this happened, right? So what I am saying, it is not just red or white. I think there should be a balance, and if we understand this, this is also a way for governments, and I go back again, for parents and for communities, for religious leaders, for traditional leaders, to help educate and inform children that they have rights and they have responsibilities. And the responsibilities is do no harm to others and do no harm to yourself.
Do no harm to others and do no harm to yourself. Thank you so much. Okay, let me bring in Grace Palm. Let's look at what international best practices can Nigeria adopt to improve child rights in the country?
A lot. You know, a lot of these international communities, I think you mentioned one earlier, the fact that a child is so educated in, you know, they know their rights so well that they are able to call the police on people that abuse them or things like that. I mean, we are not encouraging that at the slightest opportunity children should just pick up the phones and call the police on their children, but at least let our children be aware of their rights, you know, at any time, so that they are not cowed into, you know, just keeping silent when their rights are abused. So I think those are some of the good practices. And then the government in some of these climes, they make very large budgets, you know, on taking care of their children. You know, their schools are excellent. I mean, there's free and compulsory education for children. You hardly find a child that is not going to school. So you know, education is very key to any nation, you know, for the development of any nation. So we need to imbibe some of those cultures. And then the hospitals, taking care of children, you know how it is in those climes. The hospitals are you know, are fantastic. Children are able to access health care. But here we still have issues, you know, even the normal vaccine, you know, for early children, you know, we still have issues with those kind of things. So we still have issues with our health care, still have issues with education, children accessing education. We still have children in our country, you know, especially in areas that are going through conflict. You know, there's no reason why conflict should stop a child from going to school. You know, sometimes you even see that even when the conflict has not affected the children, you know, the government packs people, IDPs, into schools. And at that point, even when the children can still go to school in an environment that is a bit safe for children to go to school, they cannot go to school. Why? Because there are IDPs, you know, occupying their schools. There are some of those basic things that government needs to take care of and encourage, you know, children to go to school and access some of these healthcare facilities. I mean, the opportunities out there cannot be compared anywhere compared to what we have in our country. So we keep calling on governments, keep calling on parents and community leaders. Everybody, you know, should ensure that we create a society or an environment where our children can thrive, you know, and be what they want to be. You know, because we keep saying that children are our future, children are this, children are that. But, you know, we're not doing what you know, we should do to ensure that these children grow up in an environment that, you know, encourages them to achieve what, you know, what their full potentials, you know. So I hope that we can do something.
How often do you engage with governments? And I mean governments at all levels. And do you think there's room for improvement for the Human Rights Commission in terms of what you do and how you do it?
Of course, there is a lot of room for improvement. You know, we are also very poorly funded, very poorly funded. So if we could have more funding, we will do more. And then our advocacy with government, we're always advocating, you know, like she mentioned earlier, we're not, we are like some kind of watchdog over what happens in other sectors.
I mean, you can prevent, which will do everybody a world of good.
Yes.
So you don't wait to see it happen and then watch it as watchdog.
Yes, that is it. Because
that's where advocacy comes in.
That's where the advocacy comes in. And we were doing a lot in advocacy to government, trying to get government to do this, trying to get government to put in certain policies, you know, that will accelerate, you know, certain aspects of the protection of rights of children. For example, where we like I said it, I think I said it earlier that we were key to, you know, advocacy for the passage of the Child Rights Act, you know, and then the child rights laws in the states as well, you know. And we also we presently the commission is has drafted a bill for safe schools in the country, and hopefully we're hoping that that bill will go through, and our children will enjoy, you know, education even during those crisis areas and even in places, because the insurgency in Nigeria, you know, has made it very difficult for children to go to school. You know, when children go to school and the environment is not safe, children are kidnapped from their schools, children are abducted at school, you know, and then some of the places there is conflict going on, so children are not able to go there. The Human Rights Commission has taken a step, you know, to get that bill, you know. So hopefully the bill, we have advocated to the National Assembly, House of Representatives and all that. So we're hoping that that bill will be passed at the end of the day, so that our children can enjoy their right to education.
Okay, thank you. That takes me to the next question, which I want to ask Benga. Let's look at the existing laws and policies. Do you think they are strong enough to protect, you know, the children from violence or abuse, or do we need to strengthen them?
Thank you. We, from our own work and interaction, we have numbers of laws in Nigeria, especially that has to do with the rights of children, right from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. She also mentioned of the African Charter, and then Nigeria also follows this to have our own national constitution, and then the Chapter 4 of the Nigerian Constitution also mentioned about the rights of every citizen. But kudos and thanks to the Child Rights Act of 2003, which specifically talks about the rights of the children and their responsibility. So we also have some other complementary legal framework. Like she mentioned, we have the National Safety, Security and Violence-Free Schools. So when you look at the content of all this law, the content, they are enriched, though there may be some gap which can be subjected to review, like the national safety on the national law on the policy on safety and the security of children in schools. The law does not give room to how, when you have crisis, how education should not be disrupted. When you have cases like COVID, how should education not be disrupted? So I think some of these things can be reviewed so that these provisions are taken care of. But by and large, the ones we have now in existence, the impediment is the implementation. We have strong laws. We have the rights, UB Act that guarantees the rights of the child to education. We have the National Health Insurance Act that also allow children to access education. We also have so many laws like that. We have them in numbers that complement each other. But the challenge is how effective these laws are being implemented. And that's where Child Protection Network comes in. And even what we have at the moment, how effective are they? I need also to mention that Child Protection Network is a brainchild of UNICEF, and then the mandate is for to provide a protective environment for children. First, to respond from being abused, exploited, or exposed to hazardous environments. Then, after response prevention, like he said, then if these cases happens, how do we react? That's where the response also comes in. So we have the law. The implementation is one of the challenges. But what we have now, we can still implement, provide feedback, review the policy or the laws, and then we can move. But our mandate is to ensure that at the grassroots, the current laws and legal frameworks that we have, let the community, like the community should be aware, know the content, know what their roles and responsibility are, and then where to draw the line. And then where there are cases where they cannot handle, we also have referral with them. We have someone in this community that is trained at the community level. At the schools, like I mentioned, we also have teachers that are trained. And some of our members are also providing pro bono counseling services to schools. So it doesn't cost the school. We have telephone line, hotlines that they can reach out for any case. And we also visit from time to time.
Do you have enough officials to do all this? I mean, we have schools scattered the 36 states of the Federation. Do you have enough officials to do that?
We don't have enough. That is why we go into the community to identify volunteers.
Okay.
So FCT, Child Protection Network is a national coalition. So in the 33 and all of the 36 states, including FCT, we have our states members there. And then because of this, we have volunteers from the communities. They have been trained. And recently, on the 19th of November, we just concluded another batch of training of volunteers on child protection and then gender-based violence. So when we train them like that, they go back to the community to identify, look at signs that, okay, even if abuse has occurred, how do you know? So they have been taught, they've been trained on this to identify and then how to also intervene to help the child, support the family, and also make sure that the society at large.
How do you deal with the issue of stigmatization? Because when a child is abused, it becomes like, a taboo and people stigmatization and all that. Most times they don't come out because of this issue of stigmatization and all that. So how do you deal with that?
You are very correct about that, because we have a couple of children who are abused.
But they cannot come out.
They cannot come out. But we also find out that in our interaction with them, there are certain things that come into play where they cannot, when they cannot talk. Number one, they are afraid. The perpetrator has threatened.
Yes.
If you mention, this is what's going to happen to you. So what we tell the society, the community, and the leaders and the parents is that, look, the attention is not on this child. This energy should be focused on the perpetrator. The survivor, the child, shouldn't be the one to be ashamed. It should be the perpetrator. So we are sensitizing the community to shift that blame game from a child that is traumatized from abuse already. You are re-traumatizing this child by questioning, oh, this happened to you. At what time? You are molested, you are raped. What did you wear? At what time did you go there? No, those energies should be directed to the perpetrator.
To the accused.
To the accused. So that is our effort, so that these children can come out and speak when they are abused. We also find out that sometimes the caseworker or the volunteer that is talking to the child is not.
We are running out of time.
You just land.
The child is not comfortable with that person.
Okay.
Probably the child felt that, oh, I can't trust this person. So you need to build that trust. In case where you cannot build that trust, that child will not open up.
All right. Thank you. So I will just take the last minute to get a winner. If you happen to meet the president today, what would you tell him regarding child rights?
Well, firstly, we all know that child rights are important. So I would admonish him, to continue to advocate for child rights
himself.
I'll admonish him to put structures in place, to put initiatives in place that will promote child rights and that will ensure that every Nigerian child will have access to their basic needs, will have access to quality education, will have access to clean water and sanitation, will have access to quality healthcare, will be protected from acts of violence and sexual exploitation, gender-based violence, and all that.
All right. Winner Yegun, child advocate. It's been a pleasure having you on Good Morning Nigeria.
It was a pleasure being here.
Let me also thank Christian Mundiate, UNICEF representative here in Nigeria. We thank you for your time and your thoughts. Let's not forget Grace Pam, Director, Women and Children Department, National Human Rights Commission. Thank you very much for the perspective that you brought into the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, Benga Adeleke, State Secretary, Child Protection Network, FCT, team leading Safeguarding and Children Resource Initiative. It's been a pleasure hosting you too.
Thank you for having me in the studio.
So that's Good Morning Nigeria. We thank you very much for watching. I am Victor Azu. We'll see you again tomorrow.
I am Ademola Adeoye. The rights of the children is fundamental. Let's all be responsible. Bye for now.